Hello and welcome to another episode of the Africa Construction Law Podcast. My name is Yolanda Walker and I'm a Director of Africa Construction Law. I'm also a partner at DWF and I'm really pleased to be joined today by no other than the Honourable Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources in Oyo State, Nigeria, Mr. Temilolu Ashamu. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You've recently assumed a new position as Honourable Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources. Before this position, you were previously the Honourable Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources. Tell me about yourself. How did you come to be appointed into this role within government in Oyo State?
So I'm a lawyer, trained in the UK and in Nigeria. I did a lot of practice in commercial law, regulatory reform and infrastructure. In 2019, I was called upon by the governor to join his team as a cabinet member as the Pioneer Commissioner for Energy and Mineral Resources in the state. And on his re-election in 2023, I was reappointed. And I think the cutover, a lot of it was determined by a number of the projects that we were able to commence, such as the signing of a deal for gas infrastructure in the state. More recently, about a month ago, I was reassigned a portfolio as the Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources, which really has provided me with an opportunity, I believe, to bring a sustainability lens to infrastructure, this time cutting across the entire administration and the entire governance system.
Wow, that's excellent that your administration is focusing on the environment and in such an acute way by actually providing this role for it. It must mean that you have been quite successful in your role as the Energy Minister. Tell me about some of the key flagship projects that you were responsible for in that role. For example, I know there was the pipeline with Shell. Should we start with that?
The gas infrastructure pipeline was one of the biggest single investments to come into the state. We spent considerable time negotiating. It's a PPP arrangement, build, own, operate and transfer after 20 years. It's critical because it's the beginnings of a transition away from the use of dirty fossil fuels, primarily diesel in this case, to a greener energy source, gas. Secondly, there are the potentials to further induce investments in terms of independent power projects, which should actually increase the reliability of electricity in the state. And this naturally will have a positive effect on the economic situation and the profitability of business and the residents in the state as well.
So on this particular project, when I was looking into it, you mentioned that it's build, own, operate and transfer. So it would be transferred back into the state ownership.
Yes. The state will own the infrastructure after a period of 20 years and then be able to concession it out for management thereafter. I think it's quite important because Shell investing the capital to deploy the infrastructure, to operate it, invariably means that at the end of this initial period, we'll have quite good infrastructure that will be transferred over to the state. This is actually backstopped by the first state-led gas master plan in Nigeria. We've done a business case that determines how the infrastructure will get to the various parts of the state and when that should happen. There's a lot of thought and planning that's gone behind it that would make an organization like Shell want to invest their capital because they see the market and they see the profitability.
Yeah.
But importantly, there is that clawback on the state's part so that we can continue to derive further value in generations to come.
It just sounds like a win-win project. You're getting the infrastructure built, but then also in that period maintained, like you say. So when it is handed over, it's handed over in a good state to the state, and then it's operable by the state for generations to come. And the key word I think that you used there was reliability of energy that it will provide, and a cleaner source of energy that it's going to provide to to Oyo State. I think it's a brilliant project. And there's also the Independent Power Project, which is another example of how you're using cleaner energy in Oyo State.
It's the state's first IPP. Again, a private investment, and this time supported by institutional investment. So everything had to be watertight. 11 megawatts, which is about 15% of what the state currently gets from the national grid. So it's definitely a step in the right direction. It's gas-fired with 1 megawatt of solar and 1 megawatt hour of battery support as well. That was particularly important for us because it sends a clear signal as to how we want to transition. Yes, reliability is key, but we want to do it the right way. And we want to do it in a way that generations to come will actually thank the administration for. This will ultimately mean that in terms of public offices and public buildings and public infrastructure, we estimate that about 21 million man-hours will be optimized annually, which is incredible. We delivered the first phase, which is 5 megawatts, and that's currently working. The expectation is that they'll continue to deliver phase 2.
It's proven that it's working. I just love the hybrid nature of it as well. The solar mixed with the battery mixed with gas. It's going to have an extreme impact on, like you say, the serviceability and the reliability of energy in Oyo. And couple that with the Shell project, it's this master business plan you've been working on for the past 6 years. And then there's another project I think really deserves some attention here. Just to give a bit of background to this project, when I think I met you for the first time 2-3 years ago. You were Africa Construction Law's keynote speaker at one of our conferences in Lagos. And following up that meeting, we were talking about the Light Up Oyo project, which was something you drove. And you showed me a photo which made me quite emotional, actually. It was a photo of a young boy working on a bench under a street light. And I think he was doing some studying or working. And this was the result, the street light was a result of this Light Up Oyo project and what an amazing impact it's had for the people of Oyo State.
So that picture still moves me till today. It was sent to me, like you said, it was a boy, I presume, doing his homework under one of the street lights that we had deployed in his rural town. And his house didn't have any electricity. And for me, that really sets the tone that policy and governance isn't abstract, but it has a direct and real impact on the lives of the citizenry. There's a duty and an obligation on those who work within public administration to take into cognizance that impact that it will ultimately have on the people, and to provide them with the type of governance that gives them dignity.
We'll put the photo up, but it really is an example of the change that infrastructure can bring to, like you say, rural areas in Africa, and it can have a positive impact on communities. By having street lighting, you're reducing criminal activity in the evening, you're extending the ability to carry out economic activities into the evening because you're providing something as simple as light. The impact, I'm sure, is far-reaching.
So in the first 12 months of rolling out the public lighting, there was a 42% drop in reported crime in the areas where we had deployed that infrastructure.
That's amazing.
And in addition, a number of the businesses involved in manufacturing, particularly, were able to start running night shifts because they knew it was safe for their workers to make their way to and from their place of work. And that in turn has a direct economic impact positively on the workforce and also on the businesses.
Yes.
And in turn on government because revenue goes up.
Exactly.
When you consider it holistically, you begin to see the positives of these kind of projects and this infrastructure and this way of thinking. The pipeline infrastructure, the IPP, the public lighting, and a number of others are actually all connected. They may be individual projects, but they've been designed to interact with one another to have a broader, more far-reaching impact than just that project alone. And I think that's one of the key things that needs to be taken into consideration, particularly in public administration. So to bring it all back, being in the Ministry of Environment now actually allows for me to continue that work, but to have cross MDA interface in terms of ESG and in terms of sustainability.
Yeah.
And to continue to remind everybody that what we're doing has a greater impact on not only the residents in the state, but also on the environment of the state and the ecosystem. And that's very, very far reaching. It's still early days, but we're already seeing the areas where we believe we can make some changes positively.
It's exciting now that your role's moved on to cover the interfaces a bit more. And even though your projects before were cleaner energy conscious with one eye on sustainability as well, you are very well placed to now have a more direct focus on ESG and sustainability in terms of linking other areas of the administration. It can't have been plain sailing, though. It cannot have been an easy journey to get to here. And what have been some of the key or the main challenges to some of these projects?
In 2019, we faced a number of challenges. I think the first challenge was institutional.
Right.
I was appointed with a clear mandate. We want energy sustainability and we want a direct impact on the people. But as an institution, the ministry had never existed before. So it started from simple things like staffing. But importantly, we were able to develop the state's energy policy, which actually guided everything that we did thereafter. Earlier this year, we updated the policy. It's due for update every 5 years.
Okay.
So I handed that over to my successor for him to run with.
Right.
The second issue that we faced was financing. It became very clear very early on that we couldn't finance everything with state resources. So we had to structure PPP projects that were bankable, that were sustainable, and that would actually have the impact that we wanted them to have. And we've spoken about two of them already. The gas pipeline infrastructure is a $100 million investment in the state. The IPP is a $17 million investment in the state. And these needed to be structured in such a way that the state wouldn't lose out, but would derive the benefit that it needed to in the interests of the public, but that would also allow for such projects to make sense from an investment perspective.
Yeah. That's a hard balance to strike, isn't it?
It is. But having come from the advisory and the client side before.
Yeah. This is in your role as a lawyer.
As a lawyer, yeah. I quite understood a number of the key considerations that investors would have. And I think the key was to put it bluntly, check those boxes, but ensure that the boxes in terms of what the government wanted in the interest of the people were also checked. And that presents a win-win. Nobody's going to get absolutely everything that they want, but we'll get all the major things that we wanted.
Yeah.
Yeah, tough negotiations. But today, with the confidence that the state will be better for it in the future. Yeah,
generationally as well. You know, just to take the PPP with Shell, in 20 years' time, you're going to have this infrastructure that the state owns and have control over that, and had the benefit of the investment in the last 20 years. I think it is a really difficult balance to strike. And I'm sure there's been hiccups, but also you've learned lessons along the way as well.
Even just to take the pipeline as an example, year on year, project costs are increasing globally. So the question is, we need this done today. We need to start now. Do we wait until we have the finances available, the funding available, or do we really go ahead with it at a reduced project cost in the interest of the people. And just as you mentioned, that there were some hiccups along the way and some learnings. So we rolled out about 27 mini grids across the state. Some were sponsored, some were publicly funded, some were private sector funded. One in particular, a community that was to be a beneficiary of one of these mini grids. And this was going to power about 600 homes.
Right.
We had done the project scope, we'd gotten a contractor who had actually moved to site. And then a community dispute broke out. And this dispute was between families that had lived side by side for generations. The matter ended up in court. And it took 2 years before judgment was sent down.
Gosh. So was the project paused? Or?
And when we saw the judgment, it was clear that we were allowed to continue with the project, but the project costs had doubled.
Oh.
And in that 2 year period, the healthcare centre was still being run on a generator. The children were still doing their homework by kerosene lantern. And we had to walk away from that site.
But the need was still there.
Yeah. The project costs had doubled.
Yeah.
The learnings we took away from that was that before we do anything, we need to have 100% community buy-in. It's not about government saying this is what's going to happen, because ultimately this is for the people. And we needed to engage and re-engage and continue engaging with stakeholders.
Yeah.
And our policy then became that it was only after we had had that engagement and that reinforcement from them that we would proceed with projects. Yeah. But that comes with an added pressure because in a society where there's a trust deficit between the people and the government, you have to make sure that you follow through on that project once you've raised expectations.
Yeah.
Which is an added pressure, but when we considered some of the issues at the time that we faced, it was a pressure that we had to deal with.
Yeah. And it comes back to that, striking that balance as well. So you're prioritizing, dealing with the people first and ensuring that they're on board before you then engage further with the project. And then also you now have learned from that the price can change so quickly in construction. It feels sometimes like Groundhog Day when we talk about global events having an impact, such as COVID, wars, and then all of a sudden the prices shoot up. And that's because of an event, let alone just standard inflation. So I can imagine that 2 year period, it is a shame, but to go in with your eyes wide open with the next project, with that focus on putting the people first, I think is honourable. You sound quite passionate about the delivery of these projects, even when you just mentioned there the fact that you weren't able to deliver that one project because of the community dispute. What keeps you doing this? What motivates you?
Human impact. So I've learnt that policy, it's not abstract. It has a real and direct impact on the people, on their standards of living, on the kinds of healthcare that they can have or that's available to them, on education systems, on everything that they have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. We rolled out solar installations at a number of primary health centres, about 23. And in the first 12 months, those 23 health centres attended to 70,000 patients.
Wow.
The data showed very clearly that people were patronising those particular health centres in favour of other health centres nearby, and in many cases closer to where they lived, because they knew that when they got to that health centre, there would be electricity with
Gosh.
which they could be attended to.
Yeah.
That's real impact. So whether it's a young lad doing his homework underneath a streetlight, or it's a health centre that is able to concentrate on health services against any other consideration.
Without distractions of...
Each and every one of these things has a direct impact on the residents that we govern. And I think that's a very big responsibility, and is enough to keep you going, knowing that you are having real life impact on people's lives.
Yeah, their everyday life. Wow.
With the new role,
yes,
it reinforces that sustainability has to be at the heart of that. Everything that's done is necessarily sustainable so that it can keep going. And these are some of the considerations, major considerations, as to why we opted for gas and why we opted for solar, and why certain decisions are going to be taken in the coming months that will ensure that all MDAs have a sustainability mandate at the forefront of everything that they do. We see it the world over. It's not unique to Nigeria or to Africa, where administrations change and policy changes along with it. But there are certain things that need to be constants. And I think environmental consideration, ESG, climate action, and sustainability need to be a constant consideration, irrespective of the direction that government is going in generally. And these are the type of systems that we want to put in place in Oyo State.
Yeah, ultimately, it's beneficial to the residents of Oyo State if it is sustainable. If even the replacement of diesel, which is something you've actioned in your previous role, with clean solar energy is going to lead to better air quality. It's going to lead to more reliable energy, to see the day where there isn't that constant generator as the backup. We're edging close to that.
I think we will. So one of the key things that we were able to do in the Ministry of Energy was the decentralization of power regulation in Nigeria. We were at the forefront of it. We led it. We were able to start taking decisions that other states are only now just considering very early on. We have designed a market that should be self-sustaining, that ought not to require government funding or third-party funding externally, and that should run by itself and be sustainable by itself. Now, that may mean that tough decisions need to be taken, but we will be better for it.
Yeah. Even with the investment, though, you've got this outside investment coming in for these projects that are ultimately enabling you to, as we said earlier, improve revenue in other areas, economic activity.
Yes.
So whilst you might not have the resource to fund all of these projects as a state, you are going to get there quicker because your economic activity is improving by assistance from private investment.
And we need to be the enabler for that. And at times, there has been pushback. Politics is politics.
Yes.
And institutions will always behave the way institutions behave. But as long as the engagement is sustained, there are channels of communication, and this is on a continual basis. Ultimately, and I believe that we all want the same things, which is a better society.
Yeah.
And the key consideration is, how do we actually achieve that?
That's true.
And once you have that sincerity of purpose, a lot of the time, people are ready and are willing to allow you to lead them to where we all want to be.
Sincerity of purpose. That's a good saying. I don't know. We'll steal that. We ask all our podcast guests some questions now so that our viewers can get to know you a bit better. So I've got a set of questions. It's just a quick one-word answer. So cats or dogs?
Cats.
Chocolate or sweets?
Sweets.
Favourite football club?
Arsenal, of course.
Oh, pounded yam or fufu?
Pounded yam.
Pepsi or Coca-Cola?
Water.
Diplomatic. Seaside or mountains?
Mountains.
Plane or boat?
Plane.
Suya or chin chin?
Suya.
Thank you. Just before we wrap up, Temi, you have entered this new role and I think you've got about 2 years of your term left. And you've got a lot to do, it seems. But how do you see the future of Oyo State panning out, particularly now in your new role and also in relation to the projects that you've managed to get off the ground so far?
On the energy side, I see that we are moving in the direction of reinforcing decentralization. And that means scaling up from mini grids to hybrid plants and building out and ensuring that that impact continues on all public infrastructure, from public lighting to hospitals, to schools and to government facilities. On the minerals side, there are now proper frameworks for engagement with artisanal miners. Geomapping is well underway, because the objective is not just to extract, but to do that in a sustainable and responsible manner.
Yes. With the geomapping, is that for the entire state?
Yes.
And that's not been done before?
So,
or smaller areas have been geomapped?
The federal government has a broad idea of what's where within the federation. But ultimately, what happens on the land becomes a responsibility of the state government.
Right.
In terms of the communities, in terms of environmental and social governance. So state governments have to take a level of responsibility. Also in terms of crime rates. So ultimately, it's the state's responsibility, I believe, to know what's where, in what quantities, and who's doing what with it. And bringing everybody to the table so that this can be done in a responsible manner. And that's the direction the administration has gone in.
Permanent record for future reference?
Yes. We don't want a situation where there's extraction and it's being carted off. We actually want the value addition to take place
and stay
in the communities.
Yeah.
And if anything needs to be exported, then it's as close to the finished product as possible. And the administration will continue to provide the enabling environment to allow that to happen. Now, rather interestingly, now as the Commissioner for Environment and Natural Resources, it brings all of that together, where we say we want infrastructure deployed in a responsible and climate-friendly manner. We want to ensure that we have the proper protocols across ESG and the proper frameworks in place. And where we say we want to do everything responsibly, because ultimately they are all connected. And we need to ensure that across board, government is acting in a responsible manner and in a sustainable manner and ultimately environmentally friendly. I also think that Nigeria as a country, Africa as a continent, and the global south need to have those conversations about how a just transition can actually happen. There's a great paradox there. The lowest contributor in terms of carbon emissions going to be the hardest felt in terms of the ramifications of that. That's a conversation that needs to be had at the table.
But it sounds like you're pioneering that. Oyo State is being a bit of a trailblazer in firstly creating that conversation, tabling it, And even by the appointment of you now as that minister responsible for the environment, you're demonstrating the importance of everything that sits behind that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And for all we want and all we say about wanting to transition, the support needs to be there. But it's also very critical that when we have these global responsibilities that national governments take up and want to take on very validly, that it's understood that you'll only actually achieve it if you have the cooperation of the subnational government, because they are key contributors to achieving these objectives. And I think that's a conversation that really needs to be brought to the fore. And a lot more can be done. We'll achieve our objectives within a much shorter space of time.
Brilliant. Well, that's a lot of food for thought. Temi, thank you so much for joining me today. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Acl Advisory, for sponsoring this podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.